Coach, roll tide. It seems like a long time since you and I last spoke at the Malmore Athletic Facility when you were just introduced as Alabama's head coach. What's your mission been between then and now getting ready for the start of baseball season?
Man, it's wild. I remember that interview, man. I felt like things were going a million miles an hour that day. So things have calmed down, thankfully, a little bit now. But no, it's been great. I mean, we spent this fall, trying to do a couple different things. And number one, instill kind of the values, instill the pillars, the thoughts, the beliefs of who we are, but at the same time, really get to know some of these kids. I mean, this team, I know that lost a lot from last year's team positionally, but and we weren't stepping into an empty cupboard. There were some really good players here, and just as much as I think it's our responsibility to kind of introduce who we are and how we do things, it's also our job to learn these kids and get to know them, know what makes them tick, learn how they operate and how they learn. And so we spent a lot of time doing that. And man, we're ready to go. I think this group's prepared. I think it's going to be a long season. There are going to be some ups and downs, a lot of that stuff, but man, I'm ready to go unleash those guys on somebody else tomorrow. I think they're chomping at the bit to get going.
We're really excited to see what the Crimson Tide will look like. Part of your early charge was to build a coaching staff, and you are able to keep Jason Jackson from last year's staff, but you bring in Mike Morrison, bring in Anthony Papio. Just what is the message that this coaching staff has tried to instill to these players? What's the style you all want to play with?
Man, it's something that I've learned from a guy that occupied an office about 100 yards away from mine for the last 17 years and listened to a lot of his press conferences. And I mean, Coach Saban did it better than anybody I've ever seen. I mean, I think we're going to talk about him the same way we talk about John Wooden. I think what he did and what he instilled in those guys transcends football. It transcends. It's a sporting thing of what do elite players do and how do they operate? How do elite teams behave? And I think that's what he taught over there. And man, the amount of stuff I've used from him over the last 17 years, even from afar, since I've been in coaching, just the idea of the illusion of choice, the idea of doing your job, the idea of the process, all these things that, man, I never knew I was going to have the opportunity to coach alongside that guy to an extent, I guess, in the same department. But man, just he's the best that's ever done it, and we've learned a lot from him. So I think when you look at our teams, you're gonna, man, not on purpose, not because I'm at Alabama now, but it's just a lot of the same lingo you're gonna hear. I think we talk offensively about this idea of the pack, and it's the identity of our group. The strength of the pack is the wolf. The strength of the wolf is the pack, and the strength of the individual is our team, and the strength of the team is you doing your job in that given moment and understanding what that is, understanding how to do that. And I think that's what young people crave, man. They want an identity, and we try to help give them that, not strictly as a hitter, not strictly as a pitcher, but just, man, like, who are you? What in your gut of guts, what do you stand for? And I think when you do that and you're authentic with them, you get the best version of them on the field. And I want a team, man, that's relentless. I want teams, and this is from a Coach Saban news conference, man. I want teams that the other team across there, when they see you on the schedule, it's like, yeah, man, like whether they're hurt, whether they're not, whether they're talented or whether they're not, that is a team that I do not want to face, because I know when we get on the field at us, if they're on top of us, they ain't letting us up off the mat, and if they're behind us, they're not going to stop chasing us till that final out's made. And I think we got a lot of kids made from the right stuff in that locker room over there that are ready to go, and I think embody a lot of those by nature.
And certainly Evan Slight falls in that category. He's going to be wearing the jersey number 3 that goes along with the 3 pillars. If you could just explain the 3 pillars to our fans, and again, what made Evan Slight the right person to wear that number 3 jersey for this first year that you're in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, I mean, we have 3 pillars in our program. It's ownership, toughness, and grit. Those are 3 things we talk about every day. That along with our mission statement, the mission of Alabama baseball, it's on the practice plan every day. You walk around the locker room, the lounge, there's signage going up. It's not just a motto for us. And I think too many times I see coaches try to make things fit, and they have these mission statements, but their players don't know it. It doesn't mean it. They don't live it in any way. It's just a cool thing that hangs on the wall in the locker room. And we want to be authentic and real. And so that's where it starts with us. So it started back in 2016. And ironically, I was the assistant coach at Maryland at the time. And Anthony Papio was on our team. And we kind of had the 3 pillars of the pack, is what we called it back there. And it was just kind of a hitter thing. And I approached our head coach at the time and said, man, coach, I got this idea. what do you think? He was like, sure. So I talked to Pap, who at the time was wearing number 13, and just pitched it to him, and he loved it and wore number 3. And man, the line of guys that worn it since then, it's really neat. And the guy that wore it after Pap's an Army Ranger now, stationed at Fort Benning, Georgia, is just one of the elite special forces warriors in our country. And there's just a long line of that, man. And it's not the most talented. It's not your best player. It's not your highest draft pick. It's the guy that embodies ownership, toughness, and grit more than anybody. And so we go through a lot of things in the fall and trying to learn them. I think when you have a returning team, you have a pretty good idea maybe who's going to be what. But for this year's team, we didn't know. And very frankly, if we didn't have a guy that we thought embodied those, we just wouldn't hand out number 3 this year. And so we went through everything, and it was pretty obvious at the end of the fall. We passed out questionnaires to our guys talking about, man, who do we think embodies these pillars the most? I didn't say, who do you think the captain is? Who do you think this? Who embodies those 3 the most? And man, we had 45 surveys, and I think 45 of them came back with Evan Slight either at number 1 or number 2. And we felt like that as coaches. I mean, Ev had a tough fall, like didn't play great this fall and was getting settled, getting acclimated, but man, was the same guy, was the same teammate, was the same leader, never stopped moving. You fast forward, I think he hit 500 in the preseason now and is ready to rock. So great human, great kid, great teammate. We had Coach Murphy come talk to our team, very similar to what Coach Oates did a couple days ago, and was talking about, Mudita and what that means, and taking vicarious joy in the success of your teammates. And nobody embodies that more than Evan Slight. So I'm thrilled that he's the first one to wear it here at Alabama, and I hope 25 years from now we look at a really cool line of guys that have been able to wear number 3.
We certainly look forward to that. Did want to talk about your team as we get ready to start the season this weekend against Manhattan. And I want to ask you for a starting lineup or starting rotation, anything like that. But I would love to go around the diamond real quick and just kind of get your thoughts on your team, starting with the catcher position.
Yeah, I mean, we're very fortunate. I think our catching room's strong, man. Like, you got the leader, I think one of the best defensive catchers in the country, and Matt Gassetti coming back. You have experience. You have a lot of that. And Mac really has honestly made some strides. I know everybody talks about his defense, which is some of the most elite I've seen. But man, that guy's made some strides offensively and is gonna hit probably 5-6 for us. Really important bat. Had a great fall, great preseason, is ready to go there. But you got Cam Guangarena right behind him, an experienced guy. Spent a couple years at Fullerton, finished last year up at Coastal Carolina. He's just experienced, man. Great teammate, great player. He's in his last year. Just a perfect guy to be able to back up Mac, or if Mac goes down with anything, to be able to step right in and plug away. And then I think behind him, you kind of have the future, in Luke Vaughn. And Luke Vaughn's going to be special, man. He is made of the right stuff. He's tough. He's grown exponentially as a catcher. He's clutch. He's everything I want in a guy. So that catching room is about perfect because you have some veterans to open the door for the young pups to get them in there a little bit, knowing that, and those have been conversations with Cam and Mac, like, that's the guy that's going to lead us into the future. So yes, you've got to be good, but you've got to prepare him to take the reins and run with it next year. That catching room is pretty dang strong.
Then how about in the infield? We know there's some newcomers there, but also some good returners from a year ago.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty there, is I think we have options, which is great. There's no secret we're going to be a pretty left-handed heavy lineup, but there's a guy in Will Porter, there's guys in Mason Sweeney that add righty bats to that order. So I think the guys you're going to see on, Will Hodo's been elite at first base. He's done awesome, run off great at bats. Cade Snell's coming back from a little ankle thing, so probably won't be ready at the jump, but is going to add to that depth at first base, on the mound, and at DH. Man, can really hit. And he's my kind of kid, man. He's a tough, tough kid, and he's going to be right in the mix there. And then I think when you look at the rest of the infield, we'll start Justin LeBron at shortstop. He's a young freshman from Miami. I think our coaches did a good job of kind of creating the opportunity where if he wasn't quite ready to start, we weren't going to thrust him into that role. But about a month into the season in the fall, I think we all knew, man, this is his spot. This is where he belongs. So we're going to run, Braun out at short from the rip. And then I think at second and third, you're going to see a host of some different players. Gage Miller's going to be in the lineup every day. It's just a matter whether it's third base or DH. But it's a right-handed batter that controls the strike zone, has thunder in his bat. Man, he's a fun one to watch hit. I think, and we always say, when you get Gage Miller in a fastball count, you better buckle up. So he's got a chance to be a really good one. Then I think in the other spots, like I said, I think you have the combination of Will Portera, Bryce Eblin, Mason Sweeney, Max Grant, who's got a lot of experience. Joey Rubin's right there in the mix. Same thing, played at a lower level, but's played in the World Series several years in a row at shortstop. So there's some options in that situation depending on what we need, And I think from the rip, you're probably going to look at Eblin and Miller at third, but I think you get a left-handed arm in there, being able to get Mason Sweeney in at second base, and then move Gage over to third, or move Eblin over to third and Gage DH is another option you have there. So I think we have some pieces, and my instructions to our guys, my comments to our guys is, man, I'm not playing the best nine. I'm going to play the nine that fit the best. Which one do we need? And that might change. And so to me, I've got 4 weeks before Tennessee rolls into town to figure out, man, who's our pinch hitter, who's our righty matchup guy, who's our lefty matchup guy, where's our best defense, and to plug that in. But I think we're pretty fortunate to have some options there in the infield.
Then in the outfield, as you mentioned, you're trying to find that best nine. You only have three spots to fill in right field, center field, and left field. But again, so much talent on this roster out there.
No doubt, no doubt. And, I think that's we're probably a little too deep in the outfield, if I'm being honest with you. I mean, I've never had 9 outfielders on a roster, and I think we have 8 or 9 of them on our roster right now. But man, there's some good players. There's some really good ones. So we're gonna start with Ian Petrutz on the left. Ian came with me from Maryland. It's power, but it's a guy that controls the strike zone. He had a at bat the other day hitting in our 3 hole. There was a 10 pitch at bat, worked a walk against a really good arm. Just competitive, can hit. A name very familiar to people in this league, and TJ McCanson, center, is really, we thought we could really help him a little bit offensively, and I feel like he's made some real strides, and he's ready to go, man. He's confident. He's in a good place. He had a great fall, a great preseason. So he's got the ability to go man center field down there. And then obviously our captain, Evan Slight, there and right. Ev's just a veteran hitter, man. That guy just doesn't matter whether you throw him in the Cape, whether you throw him in the Big Ten, wherever you throw him, he seems to hit 320 with 15 homers. So just a guy that runs off a professional at bat there. And then you have 3 other guys that you're going to see hit a lot that are all outfielders, whether they're playing in the outfield, whether they're DHing, whether they're pinch hitting. But Camden Hayslip is going to be a special player, man. That guy's ready to go, and he might be a little slow coming out of the gate. Had a little weird thing with his thumb the other day, and he's feeling way better. He might be ready to go for Friday. He might not, but it's not going to be a long-term thing. He's in a good place. But man, then you're watching. He's had the talent for years, and I think he's starting to believe it. And that's what I tell him every day. Man, I think that's the most dangerous fastball hitter in America. You throw him a fastball and a fastball count, man, it ain't going to be fun for the other team. And so he's been awesome. Will Hamner, local guy, been around the program for years. Beautiful swing, professional at bat. You're going to see him either in left or DHing, pinch hitting, some of those options there. And then again, kind of the future out there is Coleman Mizell, kid from Hartselle, that's left-handed. It's power, it's strength, it's speed, it's command of the strike zone. And man, it's an intimidating at bat. That guy, I watched him turn around 101 at his letters the other day. I mean, he can just really hit. So yeah, I think those are some of the guys. I know I just gave you like 20 names, but I think that's a byproduct of, man, these kids have been good this spring. They've given us a lot of firepower, but a lot of pretty tough decisions to make over the next few weeks.
Yeah, speaking of tough decisions, same could be said for your pitching staff, whether it's determining starters for the weekend, the midweek games that are coming up, trying to figure out some bullpen roles. Who has you excited on this pitching staff to start the year?
I mean, it's got to start with Ben Hess, to be honest with you. I mean, having Hess back healthy, it's 95 to 100. The fastball goes straight up. I tell guys that all the time, man. Like, he can tell you fastball's coming. It's still hard to get above that thing. It's a really good fastball, but he's not a one-trick pony, man. Like, it's 4 pitches. It's a breaking ball. It's a slider. It's a changeup. He can manipulate the slider to do some different things. I mean, I think it's got to start with Heater and what he can do. Riley Quick's been outstanding. I'm talking real good, like turbo sync at 99 with a 91-mile-an-hour slider. Much better feel for the slider than he had in the fall. So he's in a good spot there. And he's just as competitive as it gets, man. That's an Alabama kid. His brother played football over here. Man, that guy's just an Alabama dude that loves to compete. And I love kids like that. Aiden Moza. Aiden's about as my kind of kid as it gets, man. It's the stuff is good. I mean, it's a 2 real breaking balls. It's 94. But man, that guy's got some killer to him. Like, he is competitive. He's mean. He's everything you look for in a guy right there. Obviously, AD's been outstanding. He's a guy that can do a lot of different things for us. Hagen Banks, same thing, competitive as it gets. But I think there's also some young guys coming. You have a guy in Pierce George who's a transfer from Texas that, man, when that guy goes in the game, everybody goes to the top step because it's going to be every bit of 99 to 101. And it's going to be a guy's just continue to get better, continue to improve with JJ and what he's done. And then some young pups, and I think Zane Adams is going to be an absolute superstar for us. You have Jansen Kinty, who's got a chance to be really good. Matty Heiberger, Sam Mitchell, some of these young arms that may not be the guys in February and March, but I think are going to throw some huge inning for us in April and May as we kind of go on a run with this thing here. And again, are going to kind of be the future of what we got on the mound.
Certainly is exciting. And again, we're really fired up for opening day at the Joe coming up on Friday as you get to spend some time at home coming up in the first couple of weeks, then off to Frisco, and then one more home series before the Tennessee Vols roll in for the start of SEC play. Just what do you like about this non-conference schedule and how it'll get Alabama prepared for what starts in SEC play in March?
Yeah, I mean, I think number one, I think my wife may or may not like it, but I actually get to be home for 3 of the first 4 weeks where I'm not used to that. Usually we're on the road for all those, so we'll find out shortly if she loves that or not. Um, but I think there's something comfortable with starting the year in your park. Now, I mean, Manhattan, I've played those guys. I know what they're all about. Those kids are going to have grit and toughness to them. I can tell you that. They ain't going to be scared walking into this place. And they're getting in here, getting some practices in. They got in last night, so they practiced last night. They're going to practice again after we're done today. So they're getting their work in. But I can. The one thing I can promise you about them is there's going to be some grit, toughness, and zero fear from those guys. So I think the schedule just really lines up, man. You get to play some games at home. You get to play some games where you're comfortable sleeping in your own bed, getting that done. Then you really go play an SEC weekend in Frisco. I mean, with those teams, I mean, Indiana, I played Jeff Mercer teams for years. Those teams, they're tough. That's going to be an SEC lineup. Devin Taylor, I think, is one of the most special players in the country. Carter Matheson, I've hated trying to get that guy out for years. You talk about mean, that guy will hit a jack off you and tell you all about it running around the bases. He's awesome. I love him. But there's some dynamic offensive players, and there's always power arms. Then you look at Dallas Babbitt and what Dan Heeper's done there. They've turned that mid-major team in Dallas into a powerhouse, and so you'll have your hands full there. And then obviously Arizona is just, you're going to get a very SEC type weekend, week 3, which is great. And then you get to come back home against a really veteran Lipscomb team, a team that returns a ton of veteran hitters. Has been in regionals, been in the postseason. And then you got Tony Vitello and the Vols rolling into town. So it's gonna be an exciting time. I think the big thing for our guys, and our biggest thing, and it sounds like the most coach cliche thing of all time, but it's just being super present, because I think what's going to determine the success of this team is not our talent, is not how we even play necessarily. I think it's going to be, how do we take a punch? And the best teams I've ever coached can take a punch. They can get knocked on their behind one game and come back the next day and come ring the bell, and they didn't get knocked off. Their confidence didn't waver. That's going to be the biggest test for this group. And like I said, the best teams I've ever coached have the ability to do that at a high level. And that's what you want to see, because very frankly, you play so many scrimmages, you don't know. Like I say this, man, I think the character of your team's built in the fall and revealed in the spring. So it's going to get revealed over these next few weeks. And man, I'm encouraged to see what this team's capable of doing. I think they're ready. They're built to the right stuff. And man, I'm ready to go unleash those guys on college baseball.
We are certainly ready for it. So, what begins with the background behind me in February, Sewell Thomas Stadium, we hope ends in the background behind you, Omaha and Nebraska. That is ultimately the goal of every college baseball program. Coach, we can't wait to start this journey with you and the Crimson Tide coming up tomorrow at Sewell Thomas Stadium. Just thank you for your time. We look forward to catching up again. Roll Tide.
Thanks, guys. Roll Tide.